So how do you learn that you're no longer going to be with JGR? Is this like something that was kind of building? You were coming to expect it? Was this a shock?
It was up and down. 17, 18, 19 were all pretty straightforward. I think we had one renegotiation in end of 18, middle of 18 that led into my deal in 19, and it was a one-year deal in 19. I won Darlington. We were working through negotiations. Well, that made negotiations pretty easy. Got the deal done like the next week. 20 comes along, and really 20 was just a bad year. We weren't running well. We were struggling. A lot of things going on just that weren't gelling, weren't making sense, weren't really in contention to win races, weren't leading laps. And I could tell it was going bad, but in my mind, I was like, well, I just need to make some changes. And I was kind of going to the team, like, here's what I want. It was my people in JGR, right? Like, here's what I'm seeing, and here's what I want to change. And I was led to believe that, we were going to re-sign and make some changes for next year and, give it a go. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I've won a couple races. I was frustrated that I hadn't won more, right? I wanted to win more races. But I had no major inclination that I was not coming back. And it was kind of the same thing as, I was talking about when I got the call about my dad. I'm at my mom's place in Michigan because it was Michigan Race Week. And it was like a Tuesday maybe. And I'm in the shower, get out, and I missed a call from Joe Gibbs. And I'm like, weird time for Joe to call. Like, Joe always called at the same times. Like, Joe called at that time. It was something probably not good. Immediately after I missed that call, Alan Miller's calling me. I'm like, yeah, really not good. Get on the phone with Alan, and I'm sitting there, and, he's kind of sugarcoating it a little bit at the start. And he's like, I got to tell you, he's kind of funny, but I got to tell you, buddy, JGR said you're not coming back. And I'm like, huh? Like, what do you mean? He's like, they're going a different direction, this and that. And I'm like, my mind's going 1,000 miles an hour now. Number one, it's already like August. It's late in the year. I'm trying to put pieces together of what's even available in the Cup Garage. Number one, at a competitive level. And then number two, of anything. Mm-hmm. So my mind's spinning. I hang up. I call Joe back. Same thing, right? Same typical. You're getting fired conversation. And first time I've been fired in my life from anything.
And you're how old? You're 24, 22.
What year was this? 2020. 24.
Yeah.
And I'd worked for my dad at Paragon. Obviously, my dad never fired me.
Yeah.
Then went and raced late models for my family and everything. Then been with them ever since. And so, that hurt, right? And I'm just sitting there. We have an upstairs there, and it's like almost a bonus room, and I'm just sitting there staring out the window. Like, I don't even know what to do.
Right.
Because now I'm sitting in my mom's house. My girlfriend Holly's up there. My sister, my whole family's there, and I'm sitting there I just lost my job at Joe Gibbs Racing, and I'm like, well, now what? I was like so embarrassed to even leave the room and go talk to anyone. I just sat there for, I don't know, it was probably 20 minutes. I was just sitting there. And finally, my mom walked in. Well, I think Holly walked in first, and I just looked at her, and she was trying to talk to me, and I was like in a daze. And then my mom, I think she must have been like, hey, Carol, like, I don't know what's going on, but he's just sitting there. So she walks in, she's like, hey, what's going on, typical mom deal. And I get pretty upset, they just called me and told me I'm not coming back. And, she obviously was loving about it, right? She's my mom. So then you got to tell everybody else. And, that's the hardest part, for me at least.
Yeah.
I don't know about.
I don't want to tell anybody this.
Yeah.
Can somebody else tell this news?
I'm like, man, it's silly as it sounds, I got to tell my grandma. I got to tell my friends, like my buddies, that I'm fired. Like, I lost my job. And I don't want them to hear it, through an announcement, because they're going to be like, well, why didn't you call me or whatever? So I'm telling everybody, and it's a terrible day, right? And so then the thing is, there is no rest from that. You're right into, well, what's next?
You still got what part of the year? You still got the season to finish.
It was August, so
right. So you still got to go to the racetrack and drive that car.
Well, and then that's the next thing. It's hard to show up and look at your team. right?
Golly.
I walked in the track. I'm like, what do they think of me?
Yeah.
You know, like, here's our driver, but he ain't coming back. And it's like, that sucks.
Yep.
And they're probably thinking, well, are we coming back? Right? Yeah. What are we going to do? So, yeah, that was the whole thing was hard. The whole rest of the season was hard. And it took away from a lot because I spent the next 3 months, right, till the end of the season on the phone.
Figuring out stuff.
Every day. I was driving around on the phone for hours a day, calling people, talking to my people, thinking of options, thinking of who's out there. It's just crazy, man. I had no time to focus on racing.
Yeah.
I was just focused on having a job.
And what do you think the perception about you as a driver was in the sport? And when that news becomes public, I'm curious on what you guys think and worry about when it comes to just the perception.
Well, I think it was tough for me because, you go to another team, a top team, and you're sitting there. You drove for JGR. I had 2 wins to show for it in 3 years conference row. And they're like, well, why wasn't it better?
Yeah.
How do you got to sit there and explain it, sell it to them, right? And, not to sound, I don't know, self-promoting, but I think a lot of people knew there was talent there, right? And I think you just had to figure out what went wrong because there was not the success at JGR I think any of us wanted. Me, at least. I don't know. They obviously felt the same way. They got rid of me. So, it was finding out what went wrong and why is it going to be better the next time around.
My assumption would be when you're talking and you're on the phone with teams trying to look at prospects, tell me if I'm wrong here. They're asking that question, like, well, why didn't it work out better at JGR? Is that right? Did people ask that? And then how do you answer it?
Yeah, I mean, people bluntly ask that.
Right, I would assume so.
And for me, I had my reasons, right? There's 4 cars there. Everybody gets great equipment. Obviously, pit crews and things get front-loaded on other guys. There were some struggles there team-wise. I had personnel. I didn't always feel like I had what I needed. Some things weren't gelling on the team side that just weren't working. Just wasn't a good relationship on some end. So, yeah, I mean, it was hard to explain, that. And just I didn't have anything to bring to the table either money-wise. I don't have sponsors with me. I still don't. So that was another hard one, right? It's like, okay, not only that, like maybe we can work past that, right? Like you have won races and cup and
when you're trying to sell yourself
coming
a new
up
deal.
And they're like, well, what can you bring to the table?
Yeah.
Nothing. Me.
Yeah.
And I do need to get paid. This is my living, right? So like that's a pretty tough sell.
How many opportunities were there? What was some of the stuff that besides the one you take with Petty? What was some of the stuff you were looking at?
Well, they dwindled quick.
Yeah.
I had talked to, I'm trying to remember, JTG a little bit. Mm-hmm. We actually came very close to a deal that fell through last minute. I talked to Stuart Haas a little bit. Things didn't work out there with some funding and stuff, to be honest. Those were probably the 2 big players. Mm-hmm. And, Petty had come on later in the game as I was talking to them.
So they were trying to keep Bubba, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
They rumored to have offered him some equity in the business, but that all fell apart or
yeah. They found out he was not coming back
late.
Like October.
Yeah.
Really late in the game.
Right. And so they came looking.
They were hunting hard, for someone, right? Mm-hmm. And it really it came at a perfect time for me because I was running out of options quick. I was starting to get nervous. I was starting to try to decide, okay, do I really want to take a, bottom of the barrel deal to stay in here, or is this it?
Yeah.
And honestly, probably wasn't going to. I probably would have called it at that point just because it's not what I was really interested in doing.
Yep.
Petty came along. I went and met with them. Obviously, they were, a mid-pack team at the time. I went up there, met everybody, and made the decision that, there is potential here in the people, in the management, in the goals, and knew it wasn't going to be easy. But that deal, came together within, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks.
If you like that conversation, you ought to listen to the entire download because the Dale Jr. download is available on all major podcast platforms.